I arrived earlier than planned. The sky was still pale, undecided between dusk and night, and the streetlights flickered on one by one like witnesses preparing to testify. I parked across the street and cut the engine. That's when I saw it. Her car, parked neatly outside the house we'd sworn would always be ours. For a moment, my brain refused to accept the image. Same model, same color, same tiny scratch on the rear bumper from the day she misjudged the turn at the grocery store and laughed it off. I remembered that laugh. I remembered everything too clearly. I told myself there had to be an explanation. There always is, right? A neighbor borrowing the driveway. A coincidence cruel enough to feel personal. I waited, counting my breaths, watching the house like it might blink and prove me wrong. It didn't. The porch light glowed warm and familiar, a soft amber that used to mean safety. Now it felt like an interrogation lamp. I checked the time. Earlier than planned, yes, but not early enough to justify surprises. I stepped out of the car and crossed the street. Gravel crunched under my shoes, loud in the quiet evening. With every step, memories surfaced. Her keys jingling, the way she'd hum while unlocking the door, the way she'd look back at me like I was the last thought she wanted before stepping inside. The front door wasn't fully closed, just a breath open, enough for a sliver of light to spill into the night, enough for sound to escape. I stopped. Inside, voices. Low. Intimate. Not hurried, not secretive in the way strangers are. Comfortable. Familiar. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I stood there like a man who had stumbled upon the edge of his own life and was afraid to look down. Then I heard his voice. Soft. Close. A whisper shaped by confidence. "You're so tight." The words weren't loud. They didn't need to be. They landed with surgical precision, slicing through every excuse I'd rehearsed in my head. I didn't hear her response, but I didn't need to. Silence can be louder than denial. The kind of silence that confirms everything you're afraid to know. My hand hovered near the door. I could push it open. I could demand explanations, watch faces rearrange themselves into guilt and panic. I could become the man who walked in too early and ruined everything. Instead, I stepped back. I sat on the bottom stair of the porch, the wood cold beneath me, and tried to understand how we got here. How a life built on shared mornings and inside jokes could quietly reroute into something unrecognizable. We didn't start broken. I know that. We started the way everyone does, hopeful, careless, convinced we were different. We promised honesty. We promised to talk. We promised that if things ever felt wrong, we'd say it out loud before it rotted in silence. I thought we kept those promises. The house behind me murmured with sounds I didn't want to interpret. Movement, breath, the soft creak of the floorboards that I knew better than my own spine. Every sound rewrote a memory. Every second made it harder to remember who I was before this moment. I wondered how long it had been going on. Days? Weeks? Long enough for confidence to replace caution. Long enough for whispers to feel safe. I stood up and walked back to my car. My hand shook as I opened the door. I didn't drive away immediately. I sat there, staring at the windshield, watching my reflection blur with the streetlight's glow. There's a moment when pain stops being sharp and starts being heavy. This was that moment. I thought about calling her phone, letting it ring inside the house, letting them freeze, letting the truth spill out through panic. I imagined the sound of footsteps, the door flying open, explanations colliding with each other. I didn't call. Instead, I turned the engine on and drove around the block. Slow, deliberate. like I could circle the truth until it changed its mind. When I came back, the porch light was still on. Her car was still there. I parked again, this time closer. I needed to see his car. I needed proof beyond the whisper that still echoed in my ears, proof I could hold on to when doubt tried to soften the edges later. There it was, a dark sedan, unfamiliar, confident in its place, parked like it belonged. I laughed, a quiet, broken sound that surprised me, not because it was funny, but because something inside me had finally cracked. I pulled my phone out and opened my notes. If I didn't write this down, I knew I'd try to rewrite it later. Memory is merciful like that. It blurs what hurts too much. I arrived earlier, I typed. Her car was outside. I heard him whisper. I stopped before finishing the sentence. Some words don't need to be written to be permanent. I locked the phone and leaned back. Tonight wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something else. Something colder. Something clearer. I wasn't going to confront her like a wounded animal. I was going to understand. I was going to watch. I was going to let the truth reveal itself completely. Because whatever was happening inside that house, it wasn't a mistake. And I was done being the last to know. I didn't go home that night. I drove until the streets lost their names and became numbers, until familiar landmarks dissolved into anonymous storefronts and sleeping houses. The radio stayed off. Silence felt more honest than any song that tried to explain heartbreak in 3 minutes. Sometime after midnight, I parked near the river. The water moved steadily, indifferent, reflecting city lights that looked beautiful from a distance and meaningless up close. I sat there with the engine off, replaying the whisper again and again, not the words themselves, but the confidence behind them. Confidence doesn't come from a first time. It comes from repetition. My phone buzzed. Her name. For a second, my body reacted before my mind did. Thumb hovering, heart racing, the old reflex to answer, to say her name the way I always did, soft, familiar, forgiving. I let it ring. It stopped, then buzzed again. A message this time. Are you on your way? I stared at the screen. Such an ordinary sentence. No panic, no guilt, just expectation. The kind you have when you believe the story is still under your control. I typed nothing. I drove away. The next morning arrived without ceremony. Gray light, coffee that tasted like nothing, a mirror that reflected a man I barely recognized, eyes sharper, jaw tighter, something cautious settling into my posture. I went to work, answered emails, nodded at conversations. Life has a way of continuing even when yours has split down the middle. That normalcy felt insulting. Around noon, she called again. I answered this time. Hey, she said, warmth layered carefully over something else. You didn't come home. No, I replied. A pause. Short. Calculated. Is everything okay? There it was, the question people ask when they already sense the answer and hope language can still save them. I arrived earlier, I said. My voice sounded distant, even to me. I saw your car. Silence. Real silence this time. Not the comfortable kind. The kind that scrambles for footing. You were early? She asked. Yes. Another pause. I imagined her face, eyes darting, mind racing through explanations like doors slamming shut. I can explain, she said finally. I'm sure you can. The words landed harder than I intended, or maybe exactly as hard as they needed to. It's not what you think, she rushed on. He was just... Stop, I said. Calm, clear. Don't do it like this. Like what? Like I'm stupid. She exhaled sharply, a sound halfway between frustration and relief. Please just come home. We'll talk. Not today. When then? I'll let you know. I ended the call before she could respond. Control returned in small, unfamiliar doses. It felt strange. It felt necessary. That evening, I did something I never thought I would. I went through the past. Not messages or photos. Those were too easy to manipulate, too full of smiles that could lie. I went through moments, conversations that ended a beat too early, nights she stayed out longer than usual, the way she'd started locking her phone screen down instead of leaving it face up on the table. The signs had been there. I just hadn't wanted to read them. 2 days passed, then 3. We spoke only once more, briefly. Logistics, neutral tones, the careful distance of two people circling a crater they weren't ready to acknowledge. On the 4th day, I saw him. Not intentionally. I was leaving a cafe when he walked past the window. Same confidence, same easy stride. He laughed at something on his phone, completely unaware of the collision about to happen. I followed him. Not closely, not obviously. Curiosity disguised as coincidence. He stopped at a gym, then a market, then finally an apartment building a few blocks from ours. Ours. The word stung. He disappeared inside. I stood there longer than I should have, staring at the door like it might open again and explain everything. It didn't. That night, she texted me. Can we talk? Really talk. No excuses. I agreed. We met at the house. Neutral ground that felt anything but. She was already there when I arrived, sitting on the couch, hands clasped, posture rehearsed. The house smelled the same. That made it worse. She looked up as I walked in. Her eyes searched my face for something. Anger, maybe, or forgiveness. I offered neither. He's not just a mistake, I said before she could speak. She closed her eyes, just for a moment. The truth does that to people. It makes them smaller. No, she admitted quietly. I nodded. How long? Long enough, she said. Longer than I meant to. Why? She hesitated. Not because she didn't have an answer, but because she wasn't sure I'd accept it. I felt invisible, she said. We became predictable, safe, and I needed to feel wanted again. The words were honest. That didn't make them easier to hear. And now? I asked. She looked at me then, really looked. Now I'm scared. Of losing me? Yes. Or of being alone. She didn't answer. That was answer enough. I stood up. The decision had been forming long before this conversation. It simply needed permission. I'm leaving, I said. Her breath caught. For good? For now, I replied, and maybe that's the same thing. I walked to the door. She didn't stop me. Some stories end not with shouting, but with understanding that arrives too late to be useful. Outside, the air felt lighter, colder, honest. I didn't know what came next. I only knew this. The man who arrived earlier and heard a whisper he wasn't meant to hear, that man was gone, and whoever replaced him would never ignore silence again. I moved into a small, furnished apartment on the other side of the city. Temporary, I told myself. Just a place to breathe. The walls were bare, the furniture generic, but there was a strange comfort in that. Nothing here had a memory attached to it. Nothing whispered back. The first few nights were the hardest. Sleep came in fragments. Every time I closed my eyes, my mind tried to finish conversations that had ended unfinished. I learned quickly that night is when truth gets loud. During the day, I rebuilt routines. Gym in the morning, work, long walks in the evening. Structure became a kind of armor. People think healing is about letting go. Sometimes it's about holding on to discipline, to movement, to forward motion. She respected the distance. Or maybe she was learning to live without me. Either way, the silence between us grew less sharp and more final. That scared me more than anger ever could. One evening, a week after I left, I ran into her friend Maya at the grocery store. We'd always gotten along. She froze when she saw me, surprise flashing across her face before settling into something cautious. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey." An awkward pause stretched between us, heavy with everything unsaid. "I didn't expect to see you," she added. "I live nearby now." She nodded. "I'm sorry about everything." "Are you?" I asked, not accusing, just curious. She hesitated. "I didn't know how bad it was until it was already happening." "Did you know it all?" Her eyes dropped. "Yes." That one word rearranged something inside me. Betrayal has layers. I hadn't known I was still peeling them back. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. "Because she was afraid," Maya said, "and because I thought she'd stop." I sighed. People always think that. We stood there a moment longer. Two people linked by a story neither of us wanted to own. "Take care of yourself," she said finally. "I am," I replied, and for the first time, it wasn't a lie. That night, I dreamed of the house. Empty. Windows open. Curtains moving in the wind. When I woke up, I felt something close to peace. Then, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "I don't know if you'll read this. It's me." I stared at the screen longer than necessary. "You don't have to reply," the message continued. "I just need you to know something." I didn't answer. But I didn't block the number either. Another message appeared. "He didn't mean what he said. Not the way it sounded. I should have stopped it. I should have stopped everything earlier." There it was again, the attempt to reshape the past so it would hurt less. I understood the instinct. I'd done it myself in other relationships, other lives. I typed a response, then deleted it. Typed another, deleted that too. Finally, I wrote, "What matters isn't what he meant. It's what you chose." The typing indicator appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "I know," she replied, "and I'm paying for it." I set the phone down, not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. Pain shared doesn't always heal. Sometimes it just spreads. Days turned into weeks. Something unexpected happened in that time. I started to enjoy my own company. Not in a dramatic, reinvent my life way, in quiet ways. Cooking for one, reading again, sitting with thoughts without trying to outrun them. I realized how much of myself I'd compressed to make space for us, how often I'd been the flexible one, the understanding one, the one who believed stability was enough. It isn't. Not without intention. One afternoon, while walking by the river again, I saw a couple arguing on a bench, voices low, tense. I passed them, then slowed. Not to listen, but to notice the familiar shape of the moment. Two people at a crossroads, each hoping the other would blink first. I wondered what advice I would have given my past self. Probably nothing he would have listened to. That night, I opened my notes app again, the same one I'd used outside the house weeks earlier. I scrolled past the sentence I'd written that night and added a new one beneath it. "I didn't break. I woke up." I closed the app. The next morning, I woke to sunlight streaming through the blinds. No dread, no replay, just a quiet sense of direction. I didn't know exactly where I was going, but I knew who I wasn't going back to being. Sometimes the most painful moments don't destroy you. They introduce you to yourself. I stopped checking my phone first thing in the morning. That small change did more for my sanity than anything else. No scanning for missed calls, no bracing for messages that might pull me backward. Mornings became mine again. Quiet, intentional, untouched by explanations that no longer mattered. Work picked up, not because I was trying to escape, but because focus came easier now. Pain, when processed, sharpens you. I started taking on projects I would have avoided before, saying no to things that drained me, saying yes to things that challenged me. People noticed. "You seem different," a colleague said one afternoon. "Calmer." I smiled. "I'm more honest." That was the word. Honest. With myself, first of all. I stopped pretending that love alone could compensate for neglect. I stopped romanticizing patience when it came at the cost of self-respect. One evening, she showed up at my apartment unannounced. I knew it was her before opening the door. Some instincts don't disappear, they just change shape. She looked tired. Not dramatic tired. Life tired. The kind that sleep doesn't fix. "I won't stay long," she said quickly. "I just needed to see you." I stepped aside and let her in, not because I owed her anything, but because I trusted myself enough now to listen without collapsing. She stood in the middle of the room, taking in the unfamiliar space. The absence of shared history unsettled her. "You look good," she said. "So do you," I replied. It was true, and also irrelevant. She clasped her hands together. "He's gone." I nodded. I'd expected that. Affairs often burn fast and leave nothing but smoke. "I ended it. For real." "I believe you." She looked surprised. "That's it?" "That's it. I already know the answers," I said, "and they don't change anything." Silence filled the room. Not the dangerous kind, the reflective kind. "I miss us," she said softly. "I miss who I thought we were," I replied. Her eyes glistened. "Is there any chance?" "No," I said gently. "Not because I don't care, because I finally do." She nodded slowly, like someone accepting a verdict they'd known was coming. "I understand." And for the first time, I believed her. When she left, the apartment didn't feel emptier. It felt resolved. That night, I went out with friends I'd neglected for too long, laughed harder than expected, told the truth when they asked how I was doing, not the polished version, the real one. It felt good to be seen without performing. Weeks later, I met someone new, not in a dramatic, destiny-announcing way, just a conversation that flowed easily. No urgency, no need to impress. We talked about books, travel, small disappointments that hadn't scarred us yet. When she smiled, it didn't awaken fear, it awakened curiosity. That's how I knew I was ready. Not because the past stopped hurting, but because it stopped leading. One evening, as we walked past a row of parked cars, I caught my reflection in a window. For a split second, I remembered that night. The porch light, the whisper, the moment everything tilted. I didn't flinch. Some memories lose their power when you stop arguing with them. I went home later than usual, unlocked my door, and stood for a moment in the quiet. No tension, no waiting for explanations, just presence. I realized something then. Closure isn't something someone gives you, it's something you decide to stop postponing. I turned off the light and went to bed, not running from the past, not chasing the future, just resting, fully, finally, inside my own life. Time did what it always does. It moved forward without asking for permission. The new relationship unfolded slowly, intentionally. No dramatic confessions, no promises made too early. We met when we wanted to, not because we needed to. That difference mattered more than I expected. Desire without dependency feels lighter, cleaner. One night, over dinner, she asked me a question that used to terrify me. "What happened in your last relationship?" I didn't brace myself. I didn't minimize it either. "I learned what silence costs," I said, "and what it protects." She nodded, accepting the answer without demanding details. That, too, felt new. Later, walking home alone, I realized how far I'd come. There was a time when a question like that would have sent me spiraling back into old images. Cars parked outside houses, words whispered behind doors. Now it was just information, a chapter, not a trigger. I passed the old neighborhood once by accident. Traffic rerouted me, and suddenly there it was, the street, unchanged. The house looked smaller than I remembered, less important. The porch light was off. I didn't slow down. That night, I dreamed again, but differently. I was standing outside a door, yes, but this time I chose not to listen. I turned away before anything could be revealed. When I woke up, my chest felt light. Choice changes memory. Weeks later, I received one last message from her. No explanations, no apologies stretched thin. "I hope you're happy," it read. "Truly." I stared at it for a while, then replied with the truth. "I am. I hope you learn to be." No bitterness, no longing, just closure that arrived quietly, like everything meaningful eventually does. I deleted the thread. Life filled the space that pain once occupied, not with noise, but with substance. Projects finished, friendships repaired, even boredom, which I learned to appreciate. Peace is sometimes just the absence of chaos. One evening, sitting by the same river where everything had first unraveled, I watched the water move the way it always had. I thought about that version of myself, the man who arrived earlier, who heard something he was never meant to hear. Back then, I thought the moment had ruined me. I was wrong. It clarified me. Some truths arrive like disasters. They don't ask if you're ready. They don't care what they destroy. But they leave behind a strange gift, the inability to lie to yourself ever again. I stood up and walked away from the water, phone in my pocket, future unwritten but no longer frightening. Because I knew something now that I hadn't known then. Losing someone who chooses you halfway isn't loss, it's release. And sometimes the whisper that breaks your heart is the exact sound that wakes you up.